At the halfway point of the year, it's downright strange that the only 2018 release with a real chance of landing a Best Picture nomination at next year's Oscars also happens to be the top-grossing film of the year. But that's only one of the reasons that Black Panther is such a phenomenon. A blockbuster hit that also feels like a landmark in ways that could conceivably register with Oscars voters next year. The Marvel release is potentially the first film since American Sniper in 2014 to land a Best Picture nod and also wind up in the top 5 of the yearly box office chart. And American Sniper made nearly all its money the following year, but Black Panther is by no means a sure thing, and its fate at the Oscars will depend on a myriad of factors between now and the end of the year. That's why it's difficult to forecast year-end awards from 6 months out, until we know what else will come along to grab awards' attention. We really can't say that anything is a guaranteed nominee at this point. Except maybe Incredibles 2 in the Best Animated Feature category. And Won't You Be My Neighbor in Best Documentary Feature. Also read, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Film Review. Mr. Rogers delivers kind message for unkind times, and frankly, it's also unfair to stop halfway through the year and look at things through the lens of the Oscars. I'd much rather look at the year so far and simply celebrate my favorite movies of 2018, which do include Black Panther, and Incredibles 2, and Won't You Be My Neighbor, but also The Death of Stalin, You Were Never Really Here, First Reformed, 24 Frames, Hearts Beat Aloud, and the documentary, The King. Most of them won't get nominations or awards, however deserving they may be. And at this point that shouldn't matter. But speculation is the coin of the realm in the awards game, and the end of June is always a time to spend some of that coin. So let's look at a handful of Oscars categories, and the films that might conceivably be contenders. Note, we are only talking about films that have been theatrically released from January through June, not ones that have screened at festivals like Sundance and Cannes but have yet to be released. Also read, Marvel boss Kevin Feige on Ryan Coogler's Black Panther, Best Movie We've Ever Made, Best Picture. If you look at the 2018 films that have been received the most critical plaudits, you'll find a group that includes Incredibles 2, A Quiet Place, First Reformed, The Rider, Hereditary, Summer 1993, Won't You Be My Neighbor, and Black Panther. But Oscars voters haven't put an animated film on the Best Picture list for 7 years, and they've never nominated a documentary. And while some of the other films are small gems, it takes a lot of staying power for a first or second quarter release to still be on voters' minds at the end of the year. Black Panther feels as if it's the one film that might have that staying power, but Disney needs to rev up during awards season and sell it as a landmark if it wants to stand a chance of landing the company's first Best Picture nominee since 2015, and its first not directed by Steven Spielberg since 2011. Making matters even trickier, no Marvel movie, or other comic book film, has come within spitting distance of a Best Pick nomination. Acting categories last year, Get Out, starred Daniel Kaluuya, was the only acting nominee from a film released in the first half of the year. Before that, it has been 5 years since anybody had done it. And the pickings seem slim again this year. Hereditary star Toni Collette has received nothing but raves, but she's the star of a horror movie, a genre that almost never gets any awards respect. Ethan Hawke in First Reformed, Brady Jandreau in The Rider, and Joaquin Phoenix in You Were Never Really Here are all spectacular, but they all have to be considered long shots at best. So does Michael B. Jordan, the riveting villain in Black Panther, but if that film manages to stay in the Oscars conversation, he might have the best shot at an acting nod in the supporting actor category. Also read, find out why Black Panther's Michael B. Jordan has to do push-ups for co-star Lupita Nyong'o. Pixar writing categories. 8 previous Pixar movies, including 2004's The Incredibles, have been nominated for Oscars for their screenplays, so Incredibles 2 is clearly a contender. And since the writer's branch is often one of the most adventurous of the Academy's 17 branches, it's not out of the question that they could recognize Armando Iannucci's typically barbed and oddly timely The Death of Stalin here. Best Animated Feature. Here's a category that already has a clear frontrunner in Brad Bird's Pixar sequel, Incredibles 2, and a solid contender in Wes Anderson's stop-motion film, Isle of Dogs. Among the other dozen or so animated films to be released so far this year, the most intriguing is the acclaimed British production, Paddington 2, which places the animated title character at the center of a live-action film. It could figure in the race if the Academy accepts it as animation, and it certainly qualifies under the Oscar rule that states, animation must figure in no less than 75% of the picture's running time. Paddington himself is in almost every frame of the film, but for the most part the animated bear is surrounded by actual human beings, which may run afoul of the next line in the Oscar rule book. A narrative animated film must have a significant number of the major characters animated. Also read The Incredibles 2, What Are Baby Jack's 17 Superpowers? Best Documentary Feature. January's Sundance Film Festival always seems to supply the majority of the Oscars doc nominees, but most of this year's offerings have yet to receive theatrical releases. Of the ones that have two affectionate chronicles of notable figures, Morgan Neville's Mr. Rogers' doc, Won't You Be My Neighbor, and Betsy West on Julie Cohen's Ruth Bader Ginsburg film, RVG, are very strong contenders, with Neighbor standing out as the early frontrunner. Others that could make the cut in the documentary branch's two-step voting process include Tim Wardle's Three Identical Strangers, The Strange Tale of Triplets Separated at Birth, along with a pair of docs with a political bent. Greg Barker's The Final Year, about the last 12 months of Barack Obama's foreign policy team, and Eugene Derecki's The King, a meditation on the current state of America as seen through the lens of Elvis Presley. Best Original Song. At this point it's hard to know for sure which songs will qualify for Oscars consideration, and impossible to know how the newly instituted 15-song shortlist will affect the song race. But songs that could receive consideration include All the Stars by Kendrick Lamar and SZA from Black Panther, Father John Misty's Gilded Cage from Hotel Artemis, and Diane Warren's I'll Fight, sung by Jennifer Hudson from RGB. The original songs written by Keegan DeWitt for Hearts Beat Aloud could also figure in the race. Low-key music-driven indies don't always register with the music branch. Sing Street was criminally overlooked 2 years ago, but songs that are performed on screen sometimes have a leg up in the race, and DeWitt's compositions deserve to be on voters' radar. The title song might be ineligible because of a previous recording, but the love song, Blink, 1 Million Miles, is central to the story and should be in the mix. Also read Hearts Beat Aloud. Film Review. Nick Offerman plays its sweet and father-daughter drama. Best Visual Effects. Marvel films often show up in the Best Visual Effects category, though none has ever won. But in the last 5 years, nominations have gone to Iron Man 3, Captain America, The Winter Soldier 2, Guardians of the Galaxy films, X-Men, Days of Future Past, and Doctor Strange. In that time, Marvel has typically has a single nominee and has never had more than 2. And if that's the case, Black Panther is no doubt likelier to be recognized this year than the company's other 2 releases, Avengers, Infinity War, and Deadpool 2. Still, the scale of Infinity War might be enough to persuade voters to give the company 2 spots. The lukewarm box office success of Solo, a Star Wars story, probably hurt its chances in the category, but it's foolish to write off anything from this franchise. Of the 9 live-action Star Wars films released prior to this year, 8 have received Oscar VFX nominations, though only the first 3 won. The Jurassic Park franchise hasn't fared as well, with its last 2 entries failing to land a nomination. But the man who started that franchise, Spielberg, could contend with Ready Player One. Also read, Steven Spielberg becomes first director to top $10 billion at worldwide box office. Getty Images. Other craft categories. The same films that receive visual effects nods often figure in the sound categories as well, though the importance of the sound mix to A Quiet Place could make it a sleeper there. Sci-fi movies occasionally make it into the makeup and hairstyling category. Suicide Squad and Star Trek Beyond in 2016, Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, which could help, Infinity War, and maybe A Wrinkle in Time. And once again, you can't rule out Black Panther in the production design and costume design categories. The bottom line: when Oscar nominations roll around next January, this year's first-half films probably won't be as formidable as they were last year, when 9 different movies released between January and June were responsible for 15 nominations. But it may be better than the year before, when first-half movies produced only 2 nominations, one for production design, Hail, Caesar, and one for visual effects, The Jungle Book. Honestly, it's too soon to tell, with too many potential awards contenders yet to come. So let's get back to enjoying the good movies that are out there now, and wait a few months before we get too serious about awards. Black Panther has been breaking box office records left and right, and it still may not be done. But for now, here are some of the historical feats Black Panther has pulled off in the big-name films it has managed to top at the box office. Marvel's highest domestic grossing superhero movie. After 6 weekends in theaters, Black Panther has passed the domestic run of The Avengers, which made $623 million in 2012. That puts it in the top 5 on the all-time domestic charts, and makes it the biggest superhero movie in the U.S. Box office history. Biggest February opening weekend. 2 years ago, Deadpool pushed the boundaries of what R-rated blockbuster can do at the box office with a $152 million 4-day start on President's Day weekend. But Black Panther is blowing by that record with $192 million in 3 days. Marvel's biggest pre-summer opening weekend. Hollywood has recognized that a box office hit can be released at any time of the year, as seen when the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast made $174.7 million last year. Black Panther is expected to beat that record by an $18 million margin. Walt Disney Pictures' biggest opening for a non-team-up superhero movie. Superhero movies with more than one hero, like The Avengers, tend to make more money than their single-hero counterparts, but Black Panther has not only beaten a 5-year record held by Iron Man 3, but is also posting a higher opening than films like Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Captain America: Civil War, films that have showcased all of Marvel's biggest heroes and, in the case of Civil War, featured Black Panther in his big screen debut. Marvel top 5 highest openings of all time. Black Panther won't stay in the top 5 for very long, as Avengers: Infinity War will bump it off the list when it hits theaters in May. But for now, Black Panther will sit alongside the likes of Jurassic World, The Avengers, and the 2 latest Star Wars films for the biggest openings of all time. Along with the aforementioned films like Civil War and Age of Ultron, Black Panther has topped titles like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight films. Marvel's highest-grossing film by a black director. It has been a watershed year for black filmmakers, with Barry Jenkins' Moonlight winning Best Picture, Jordan Peele getting a Best Director Oscar nomination for Get Out, and F. Gary Gray directing a billion-dollar hit with The Fate of the Furious. Now there are 2 black directors ranked in the top 15 highest-grossing films of all time, with Ryan Coogler and BP passing Gray's $1.23 billion worldwide cum for the 8th. Fast. Now, Black Panther, with its 10 black actors led by Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, joins them on that list. 5 straight weekends at No. 1. In the 80s and 90s, 19 films stayed atop the weekend box office charts for 5 weekends or more. But since the turn of the century, only Avatar was able to reach that mark in 2010 with 7 weekends at No. 1. Black Panther now joins those ranks with 5 weekends atop the charts. Black Panther has been breaking box office records left and right, and it still may not be done. But for now, here are some of the historical feats Black Panther has pulled off in the big-name films it has managed to top at the box office.